Okay, so good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Eastridge University Industry Briefing Session. Today's discussion focuses on a topic that is rapidly shaping the future of education. It is data informed leadership and decision making. So, in today's educational landscape, institutions are generating more data than ever before. However, the real challenge lies not in collecting data, but in interpreting it meaningfully in different ways that genuinely enhance student outcomes, empower educators, and strengthen institutional effectiveness. So, to help us explore this critical area, we are honored today to have with us Dr. Vanda Gammoh. Dr. Gammoh is a distinguished educational leader, campus director, and educational consultant with extensive experience in driving school improvement, fostering innovation, and developing effective leadership practices. Her work is deeply rooted in creating inclusive, student centered learning environments while ensuring sustainable growth and excellence in education. Dr. Gammoh strongly advocates that leadership in education must balance data, empathy, and vision to truly create impact. So, Dr. Vanda, it is a pleasure to have you today. It is really a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you so much
I
for
would
having me.
really, yeah, I would really love to have something from you.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, am I audible?
Now you are, yes. For a
Okay,
second, I lost you.
okay. So I would really love to know, is there anything that you would like to say before our discussion starts?
No, I just very glad to be here today. It's really important that we're discussing data and leadership. It's the topic of this era in all industries, not just education. And it's great to hear how have a discussion today how data impacts leadership and leadership informed decisions.
Right, right. Okay, so to begin our conversation, I would like to know that when we talk about data driven decision making, it is often associated primarily with student assessment scores, right? So,
Yeah.
from your perspective, how should we truly understand data informed leadership in today's educational environment? And also, why is it becoming so essential these days?
So we have to differentiate between two things: data-driven decision and data-informed decision. There's always we all started as data-driven decision makers because we want to look at the data, we want to interpret the data, we want to understand the data in order for us to lead with clarity. And then we get to data-informed decisions where data is not just numbers. We're looking at qualitative and quantitative data just to differentiate the concepts that we're dealing with. And when we're talking about data informed decisions, when we talk about qualitative and quantitative, which added value to our observation, to our findings, to our documentations, it gives another depth to the data that we're looking for. Because normally, as you said, when we talk about data in schools, they only think about student results. It's a huge part, but there's impacting factors or factors that will results will impact the outcomes, the results of the students. So it's not a standalone data that we just look at outcomes. We have to look at other types of data, whether, if you want me to name just a few, there is a very clear correlation between attendance and achievement for students. So the attendance data is a big factor as well as leaders that has to look at, because if you keep doing the right thing but you don't have results and you are skipping the 3D picture of looking at the holistic approach of that kid, why is this kid, although I'm doing everything as I can as a school in terms of teaching and learning, but that kid is not progressing well, his not outcome is well, I look at other data. As an example, attendance is one of them. So it's really important that to understand data is not just the outcome, which is the final result. There's a lot of data that plays its part to get to that point that we have to look at and analyze. If you want me to give you another example of the data that we need to look at, for example, is the, like I said, the attendance, but there's other data that has to do with the attitude to learning, where we do test for the kids or collect data about how the kids feel about the school. How do they feel about their learning process? How do they feel about their attendance in school? How do they feel about do they feel safe, not safe? Can they learn? What's the obstacle? So all of that will turn from just numeric to qualitative, so quality data that you have to bring into the equation to understand what is happening. The most important part that we need to talk about, even when we talk about different types of data, is why are we doing this? Why are we collecting the data and what we're doing with it? So it's better, like as a school, we now transferred our school, American Gulf School, to go from being reactive to proactive when it comes to data. And we can talk about this in details when we talk about how we deal with the data, what do we do about it, and how we cascade it down to our teachers and backward to the leadership level.
Right. So that's a very, I mean, I could not actually get it so far, like the way you have actually explained this. That's a very insightful way to frame it, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. So beyond academic performance, what other forms of data do you believe that educational leaders should be paying closer attention to in in order to understand the overall health of their institution?
That's a very good question. The first in the first question, when we said they think that data is only the student results, where that's not just the whole story, it's part of the story. I think it's the input and output of data. So the input of data that we need to look at in determine to do what, the cause and effect. What are we? Why are we collecting this data, and what are we going to use it for? And that will give you a deeper and a different perspective on what data I need to collect and how I'm going to use it. So it's not about just collecting data to be data rich, but decision poor, or I don't know what to do with it or how to analyze it. So I need to understand, why am I collecting this type of data and what am I going to do with it? So it's really important for us to understand the purpose. So as I said, attendance data is really important. Attendance pattern, to get out of it the patterns, like to understand, what is my attendance pattern? What am I looking at? Am I looking at a constant attendance issues with a certain grade level, certain subjects, certain days, to be able to solve this problem? The other thing is satisfaction surveys. It's a type of data to look at the kids' satisfaction surveys. There's kids' well-being, staff well-being, parents' well-being, parents' engagement, parents' feedback. All of that is important. Why? Because we believe in continuous improvement. And in order for us to do and to improve our services to the students, our center and focus, and to their families, we need to understand where they're coming from, what their feedback for us to grow. We need also to it helps us also drive our improvement, saying what our focus area to be able to cater for the needs of these kids. We look at data when it comes to retention, like staff retention, kids retention. So how many kids I've retained this year, how many kids withdrew from my school going to another school, how many teachers stayed in my school, and how many teachers left and resigned to be in another school. And the data can be so deep in details. Like, for example, I can look at the retention of the staff and say, okay, I have 4 resignation this year. Are they improving? Did we train them well and now they're going to a higher position in other schools? Am I giving opportunity for my teacher to grow? So I collect the data of internal hires or internal promotion to look at my patterns and my practices. Am I implementing policies, yes or no? The other part is I look at the data of enrollment data, trends, nationalities, geographic information about where my kids came from, why did they pick my school, what is it, to understand, to have a deeper understanding. So data have multiple layers. Now, the student scorecard, which is part of the data, will help me do so many things. all of the data that I'm collecting will give me a rounded idea about my student from different elements, my school, the grade level, the school, if it's primary, secondary. So I can drill down to understand what is the surrounding, how's the environment looking for that kid to be able to take judgment. Now, the score data, which is the data that has to do with grades, achievement of the kids' progress and attainment, that type of data I use for intervention. So I start with it. So I'm proactive. So I build my full intervention program. So it's tailored to that individual kid to be able to enhance their experience in the school. So you see, there's so many layers to data. And the most important part is, as I told you, why am I collecting this data? What am I going to do with it? Because it's not about just collecting that data and analyzing it. What's the purpose? What's the outcome that I'm using this data for?
Right. That's actually true. I mean, that brings us to an important balance within education, I believe. So there is often a concern that education cannot be reduced to numbers alone.
Yes.
So, according to you, how can leaders effectively use data while preserving the human element as in ensuring empathy or student well-being?
Yeah. It's really important to understand, and this is why I started this conversation and this discussion with you today, in differentiating between data driven decisions and data informed decisions. Because data driven decisions, we all started as data excited because we want to enhance things, but then it's not about numbers, it's about the humans. That's why it's really important to get a holistic idea about the kid. Because I'll give you an example. Education is a human connection career. It's not like a this we need the human connection, we need the relationship, because even the research has proven that the more you build relationship with your kids, and they feel safe, the quicker they will progress and grow, because safety is everything. So that human connection doesn't happen. If it doesn't happen, a lot of things doesn't happen. So a kid is not the number that I look at the screen looking at the kid. That's why it's very important to have the qualitative and the qualitative data about that kid, qualitative and quantitative. My observations are really important. My findings, my human connection with that kid, his family, to understand what's happening. For example, if suddenly a kid who's been progressing well suddenly reached to the point that their grades decided to decline, started to decline, right? I have to investigate why. If I just look at numbers and I say, okay, that kid started to decline because he's not doing well, he did not study, that's an assumption. But I have to investigate more. I have to meet that kid, understand, is there anything happening at home? That's data. Any changes that happen to his life. And this happens not through dashboards and screens, it happened through the social worker, right? I have to look at the data to see that there's something wrong. That's step number one. But I cannot take decisions right away saying, okay, this kid has dropped 10 grades, then this kid needs intervention, this kid needs, it doesn't work this way. I look at the data and decide, okay, there's a problem. I need to understand what's happening. That's the conversation that happens with the counselor, where they sit with the kids, and a conversation with the parents, looking at the exams paper itself, saying maybe there is a different way of asking questions. It's an opening. It opens door. It gives you insights. And data is the final destination, but it's not the journey. Like, I want my kids to achieve way better, right? It good. It set the path for me where I want to be, but the journey is where human connection is really important. So it's not like I'm sitting as a director on my computer and looking at dashboard and say, okay, this kid needs intervention based on data. It's a conversation that needs to happen with the kid, with their parents, with their teachers, to understand what's happening. The other element that you need to understand is to build a community. It's human connection. So I cannot build a community just based on data. This is why the parent surveys and the community surveys are important. So if I get the feedback from them and it's up like this, it's great. But what's happening is that I'm receiving the data, I'm doing something about it. I'm reaching back again to the community, creating activities that matters, creating connections that matters, creating events, creating interactions that create that community. So as I told you, our target as education is to prepare kids for the future. And in order for us to do that, we partner with these kids, we partner with our teachers, and we partner with our community. All that partnership, you see, it's a relationship between two parties. So it can never happen just behind a screen where you just look at the data and say, okay, the numbers is telling me this is my decision. It never happens this way.
And that's a very crucial perspective, I guess. I mean, especially for leaders navigating complexity, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and you
So,
have to find a
yeah,
balance. You have to, as a
yeah,
leader, we start very excited about data. We might lose our balance. We could be very strict in our how we read and interpret the data. After you deal with
right.
data for some time and you understand how to read it and analyze it and how to use it, that's why I always tell my team two things. It's really important to triangulate your data, because if you don't triangulate that number with other elements, then you're losing the big picture. You cannot get the big picture of what's really happening. So I cannot count on one source of data as the truth, but I can triangulate the data and say, I need this kid report card, I need the counselor notes, I need his previous cards. So I triangulate the data of that kid, and then, or his cognitive test, to understand what's happening, what's the story, what is the story that this data set of data, where it's qualitative or quantitative, is telling me about that student.
Right. So now I think let's now shift our focus slightly towards educators. Yeah, that how can leaders use data in a way that supports teachers' professional growth? I mean, rather than making them feel monitored or evaluated, how can you just support them?
That's a really good question that all leaders think about all the time, because you want to build, you believe in growth mindset. And this growth mindset, not just for your kids, your students, also for your teachers and for your leaders. As a school, we collect data formally and informally. Informally through our walkthroughs that happens in the classrooms, right? Like we go in, we look at, observe what's happening, and we document our findings, and we go to the teachers and talk to them and document the findings. Formally is when we do the formal observation, where we have the set of criteria going in, saying, okay, I saw this, and I didn't see that, and I collect the data. All that data, because we're using platforms, is collected and stored, and it gives me patterns across the school, patterns across subjects, patterns across uh, grade levels. What do I do with these patterns? It tells me where my teacher needs support. Individual levels, this is my observation. This is what I go and see. Okay, this teacher needs more support in literacy. This teacher needs more support in this. The bigger picture is where I decide, like, okay, go in and I see trends and data that
Right.
more intervention in a certain topic or a certain domain. Maybe AI integration now is a big thing. The other data I collect as a teacher, from my teacher as a leader, is I survey my teachers and I ask them, what do you want? What do you feel? Because when we build our improvements, when we think about improvement of the school, it's the whole school community improvement, the department improvement, and then individual improvement. It's part of how we look at improvement. So the voice of the teachers is really important on what do they think they need in order to step up in their careers, or in order to enhance their practices inside the classroom. So the discussion about their professional development is huge, because their growth is really important for us. If they grow as individual, we're gonna grow as a school. That when it comes to how we collect and how we focus on professional development. The other side, which is the scariest side for all teachers, is how we help our teacher read that data. As I told you, we have a lot of points of data. It's so overwhelming for you as a teacher if you have to go from one place to another to look at the data. You cannot imagine what does it mean, like if I'm a very rich data school, how it's so overwhelming. So one of the things that we helped our teachers to do is we build dashboards that collect all the information, data information in one place. And we train our leaders first to interpret that dashboard. So if I want to know something about Komal, I have to go to the dashboard. I put Komal, and then all the data about Komal will appear: her attendance, her behavior, her patterns of if she's late or not late, her grades in external assessment, her grades in internal assessment, her performance in a cognitive test, all of it. It will give me a holistic picture about Komal that will help me first, on a first level, understand Komal, right? Have a bigger picture about Kamal and try to support Kamal ahead of time, even if Kamal is still coming to my classroom or not. Or if Kamal is in my classroom, it will help the teachers plan for Kamal and support Kamal in an individual level. So training your
Right.
teachers on reading, interpreting data, but facilitating that for them in a way that will make it very more convenient for them to use it is really important. And I think for us, we partnered with Verdant and we created our dashboard through them. So they were very helpful for us, and we're with their explaining the data and creating a dashboard for us to help us facilitate that part of our day to our teachers. I can't see you, Komal. I think I lost Komal. I don't know when Komal is gonna join us again, but there's two questions that I saw in the LinkedIn live we can discuss until Komal is back, because we don't want to lose this opportunity of our discussions, which I think Sneha was asking data privacy and ethical use of information are becoming major concerns in education. What safeguards should institutions put in place to ensure students and staff data is used I don't know personally? When Komal is going to join us again, but there's two questions that I want to ask. Yeah, that's the question, I think. And we have another question from Neha saying, many schools have access to data, but not all leaders have strong data analysis backgrounds. What skills or competencies should educational leaders develop to become more confident and effective in interpreting data for decision making? I think the most important part, my advice to the leaders and what skills they need to do is first not to be scared of data. That's really important, not to be scared of data, because being scared of data, a lot of teachers not data profession, so they are intimidated of the data and they hate looking at it, and they take ready-made templates for them, so they don't really struggle with the data and understand it. But if as a leader you sit down with a data specialist and tell them, I want to see one, two, three, and you're confident, you're a risk taker, and ask questions about the data, ask questions about how to interpret that data, sit with other leaders to be able to read the data and interpret it so you are capable of reading it. It's a skill that is acquired. That with training and asking the right questions, you will get to the to where you need to be. As long as you're understanding what is that set of data, what is a good data look like, and what does a bad data look like. So, for example, in the UAE, we do a lot of inspections to schools, and they look at our data, for example, attendance data. They look at the parent survey. They look at the satisfaction of the parents. And you need to know this threshold or the benchmark that the data after at the benchmark, what does it mean? Above the benchmark, what does it mean? Below the benchmark, what does it mean? This is really important. So if you understand the benchmark of that data and what does it look like, and how does it look like to have a good data or bad data, you have gained the skill of interpreting your own data. Representation of data, that's something as a school leader you have to work with your data specialist or the team that you're working with to create that data representation for you to be able to present it in a way that you can understand it. My team, for example, not all of them will prefer a graph, but I would. Other team members will understand more to represent the data using a pie. Other members will prefer to use a chart. So every team member will prefer to read, to put the data in a representation that will be easier for them to interpret and read. But I will circle down back again and say that the most important skill is to understand the data, why you're collecting the data, what the threshold of the data look like, what is a good data when it comes to attendance. Like for us, for example, in the UAE, to be an outstanding school, you have to have an attendance above 98 or 98%. So anything below 98% will be considered as very good, and anything below 95% will be considered as good, and anything below that will be acceptable, and so on. So as a leader, I need to understand what data am I collecting, how to break it down into segments to understand the threshold of the data. And the last one part is to, when I present it, I can present it in any way that is familiar to me, and I can interpret it and help other people to read it. I was answering a question, Kamal, until you came back. I answered the question about what skills leaders need to build. And I do
Yeah, yeah.
advise I do advise leaders to take data analysis courses. It's really important that you take that level of courses to be able to understand data, how it's been collected. So if you have not done masters or PhD before, you know that you don't understand the how data is collected and how to analyze it and look at it. I advise you to take a data analysis course from collection, the different type of data. It will help you a lot in collecting the data, understanding the validity of your data, because that's another huge thing that we face in schools, that either the sample that you have collected is too small or too big, and you're comparing not apples to apples, you're comparing apples to orange. So the data that you come up it brings to you, the tool that you're using is not valid or reliable, so you cannot even count on the data to be able to um, make a judgment out of it. So there's a lot of elements that you will learn that is very important for you as a school to understand about data, collecting data, how to collect it, what is a valid, reliable data, if you do data analysis. Or I
Right.
think I remember that I took this course in two courses, research methodology, because the research
Okay.
methodology course is where you get to explain what is a valid, reliable tool, how does it work. When you do your own research and you want to analyze it for your thesis, one of the things that you need to do is make sure that your tool that you're using is valid and reliable. Also, it happens for the assessment. So if you're counting a lot on the assessment data that you're collecting internally, and you're not using any external data of any international benchmark assessment, your data is still not reliable. It depends if your assessment is reliable, but normally teacher will take a lot of time to create reliable assessment that will measure accurately and will give you accurate data about where the kids are at. But the external assessment, like the benchmark assessment, for example, in our context, is the NWA map testing for the American standards. This is an external benchmark assessment that is benchmarked against all the kids who are doing map. So, and the questions the results are reliable and valid, and you can use to internally plan and understand where the school and the school is going for. I think we have another question, Kamal. If you want to answer that, or you want us to go back to your questions.
No, I would. Would you like to actually expand yourself, or can we go to the next question? Maybe.
Yeah, there's another question about data integrity and data
Yeah. Yeah.
safeguarding. I think it's really important. It's a very valid point. I think as a school, you need to secure your data. Now, we have a very strict data policy in our school that we do not share data unless we have a data sharing agreement. All our teachers sign the data integrity policy that we have. They all read it. They all understand it. Nobody can share data outside the school. And we have 7 golden rules for sharing information and data. And we have to understand who's the responsible parents, who's the responsible person of that data, who's the a gatekeeper of that data. And the second part is that we have a very strong layers of ITs, where IT is a big thing. So we have to be very careful with our data and how we collect it.
Right.
So it's really important that you are aware of the safeguarding of your data. That's a very important question, means that you understand the importance of where this data go, who have access to it. I will give you another example of access of data. CCTV footage, that's data, because it comes in a school. We have a very strict policy who can review it, how it can be retrieved, and who get access to it. That's as small as something internal. So can you imagine the information of the kids, or the grades, or the outcomes, or all our parents also share their consent to share their data, or if we are sharing results with outside entities, with for competition, the parents need to understand that they need to sign off that their consent for sharing the data. As a school, we have to go back to the authority saying we're going to share this data with this entity regarding our school. Or if we are participating in a research, there is a lot of steps that we have to go through in order to make sure that our data is protected and our finding is protected. So I hope I answered these two questions.
Right. Yeah. Right. So that's very relevant in today's evolving landscape, I believe. So, with the rapid rise of technology and AI in education, how do you see data systems and AI powered analytics shaping leadership decisions over the next few years?
So one of the things that we are really proud of in my school is that we have something called life tracking because of AI. which means that I don't need to wait for data to update or to get information because I'm using something called, and this is strictly for student performance. I use something called adaptive learning tools. So we use it and we can put the kids on track and it track these kids and give us um, we skip that into um, having the data, going through, reading all the data into receiving very live data in my dashboard saying, okay, this is the numbers of kids who use the tool. This is how they perform. This is the number of skills they mastered. This is the kids who needs to improve. These are the kids who need to be working with. This is the activities they can do. So you see how much time we saved instead of meeting and looking at all the results that the kids have done through 5, 10 assessment and then go to the last question, to going to the last part where I take decisions. And now I can do all of that in just 10 minutes, sitting with the team, looking at the dashboard of live data that's happening in my school while kids are practicing on these platforms. So AI has saved us a lot of time when it comes to data and collecting data and
Right.
understanding. The other part is because we're using AI now can analyze data like this. I will give you an example. Put all the grades of the kids into AI, saying, okay, that's without their names, just put the list of grades saying, this is the grades that my kids took in my exam, and ask AI to analyze the findings for you. If you upload the exam with the question and say question one, question two, and you divide it by, it used to take us time to look at all this information to be able to decide, right? And then forms came in and helped us looking at different questions to see what's the common misconception that happened in the test. Now, if you upload all that information into AI and tells it, please analyze the class performance looking at 1, 2, 3, it will give you a full analysis for the teacher in 2 seconds.
Hmm.
You
Right.
got my point. So it's really helpful, and I think it's going to save more time for planning, more time for analysis, more time for teacher spending time to understand what they need to do to address the data. I think this will be much easier solved. But if you are a teacher and worried that AI will take your place, it will never, because as I said, human connection
Right.
is the core of education.
Right. Okay. So before we conclude, if there is one leadership principle that every education institution should embrace when using data to make decisions, what would it be according to you?
So I would say I would prioritize, as in our school, I would say prioritize building data literacy across the team. You have to do this practice in your school. I
Right.
always triangulate with human perspective and human stories and human uh, elements. You have to triangulate, you have to reflect, you have to have the human reflection into the data, because without the empathy and the reflection that we have, we cannot get a well-rounded evidence of that student to be able to support.
Right.
um, Use data. I will advise them to start where they are. Like, it's never too late to start using data. You can start small. You can build it to be much bigger. Then you will go to consistency. Then you will go to collaborative, looking at data. But um, that will turn you into a. It will transform your school. You got my
Right.
point. So going wherever you are, just start, and it will slowly transform your school into a bigger, more data oriented, data informed decision making.
Right. Right. Yeah, okay. So thank you, Dr. Vanda. That was really a very insightful conversation that we actually had today. And
Thank you.
also, thank you for sharing such thoughtful and impactful insights with us today. Your perspectives remind us that effective leadership is just not about having more data, but rather about having or using the right data with clarity, purpose, and humanity. So,
Yes.
on behalf of Eastbridge University, I would like to thank our audience for joining us today and also Dr. Vanda. It has truly been a privilege hosting you. We hope to continue such meaningful conversations and collaborations in the future.
Thank you so
Thank,
much, Kamal. And thank
thank,
you, Eddie. Thank you.
and also very very sorry for all